How's everyone doing today? Welcome to HiFi Mafia. Today we have a really special guest, Vinnie Rossi, one of my really good friends. And we have other hosts. We have HiFi Turtle. Say hi.
What's up, everyone?
We got Giles
I paused for a second. I don't know why I paused. We do this all the time. So
This is pro right here.
We got Giles McCoy,
Hey, everybody.
my boy. And we got Howard Neller from the listening chair.
Hey guys, I think the drugs just took a quick break for a second, then it kind of kicked in again. So turtles up and going, and hey everybody.
All right,
So
so
I ask you guys a quick question, but before we start, did you name it HiFi Mafia after you knew I was coming on, and there's going to be some jokes about my name and Mafia?
We wanted you to feel comfortable.
I do.
Daniel's the one who started that, and it wasn't the idea that we were going to do the live streaming and all that either. It was just that we were all hanging out at Expona, and he made a group chat, and he just called it the HiFi Mafia. And then
there was a story. There was a story behind that. So we were at Gomez and Gomez. Is that the
Guzman?
Yeah, the Guzman y Gomez, the
Guzman y
Mexican
Gomez,
place. Yeah.
Gomez.
and the taco place?
That's right. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I said to Dan and the other guys, I said we should really get together. We'd be like a cartel, and we really could put some distance between us and the legacy media. And then Dan said, "Yeah, man, we'd be like the mafia." And I guess Dan maybe didn't understand what the word cartel meant. So
Mafia sounds bad.
and so I said, "That's it, man. We're the HiFi Mafia." So that's how that happened.
And we're all in different time zones pretty much. I think we covered the whole from West Coast to East Coast. Is that right?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Me and Giles are
I'm
in the
in
same
Mountain.
time zone.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're only
so
missing
we're almost there.
Pacific time is the only one not represented right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Dan and I came up with the name, and then Giles and Turtle, they said they thought it was good, so we said let's do it.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah,
Now,
I came
before
up
we
with the
get
name, I came up with everything, all the credit.
all the credit, so before we get in any deeper, so for everybody out there that's joining us, we've got Vinnie Rossi from Vinnie Rossi, and we've known you for, I don't know, going on 3-4 years now, something like that. Makes incredible gear. So this is everybody's opportunity if you have questions to get those in, and we can answer those directly. We can also talk about any other topics that people have out there, and we'll also cover off on some of the HiFi news for the week. And if anybody has any thoughts or questions around that kind of stuff, feel free to drop that in as well. This is going to be an hour of freewheeling fun. And then for all of our viewers out there, thank you so much for joining. And, we have Richard with us, a number of other people as well. So thanks for jumping in. Please call yourself out in the comments so we can see you. And with that, Dan, lead us down the path, sir.
So welcome, Vinny, to the HiFi Mafia stream. It's a pleasure to have you here. Hope you're having fun.
Yeah,
So
thanks for having me.
Let's start with some questions. So who's Vinnie Rossi and how did the company start?
Vinnie Rossi is me, and
start.
I'm Vinnie Rossi, and I started 2005, and this was a period when I went from working in a completely different industry only for a few years out of college, which is telecom, Lucent Technologies. I was in a group as a test engineer, and the main products that we were testing were high-speed laser fiber optic communication systems. So transmitters or receivers to send lots and lots of, at the time it was landline. It was very popular. This is how old it was. This was like early 2000s, but it was before cell phones really took off. And I was talking to Giles right before the call started about Penang, because you were there not too long ago. Actually,
Yeah, just a couple months.
Penang, Malaysia, back in 2002, I believe. I was there for a couple of weeks, and it was for that company. But on the side, after work, I had already been going crazy with my audiophilia addiction / hobby / whatever we're going to call it. So I was doing that a lot. And it came to a point when I just decided, I think I want to do this full time. And I knew I would need to do it starting full time if I ever was going to make any chance of surviving and growing. So officially January 2005 is when I started. So we're almost at 20 years.
Wow.
Vinny, correct me if I'm wrong. Now, you started out modifying other people's equipment, right?
Yeah. So my first product was based on a Class T amplifier that was really inexpensive. It was a company called Sonic Impact, if anybody remembers, and it was using a tri-path-based amplifier. And what I did was I took this unit apart and pretty much put it in its own enclosure, powered it from its own lead-acid battery, and did some modifications on that board. And when I started out, this is before actually I started Red Wine Audio, I was just posting on the forums. I started out, it was a direct company. I continued as factory direct all the way to 2019 is when I officially switched to going with dealers and distributors. But back then it was the audio forums, specifically Audio Circle. And I post about what I was doing. And then that kind of, and other units too, like CD transport, CD players, typically stuff that wasn't even that expensive, and just doing a handful of modifications. And there was a lot of interest about it, which led to, hey, would you do this for me if I paid you, type of private messages, which then became more of a business opportunity. Not just that tri-path unit, but I think it was 2006, I started modifying the early iPods, the fourth generation.
Really?
That was the one
That's
that put in a Wolfson DA converter, and the modification entailed bypassing the whole entire headphone output and just using it as a line output source.
Mm-hmm.
And early on, people were like, why would you modify an iPod? MP3 sucks. I'm like, I did the Morpheus thing where it's like, what if I were to tell you that it actually plays WAV files and non-compressed audio? You could actually do that with iPods too. So it was really cool. And then from there, from the mods,
WAV files.
Yeah, WAV files, and AIFF, and we did everything but FLAC. And then there was this third-party software you could use as an operating system. It was called Rockblocks. Oh man, I hope I got it right. But it was a software that instead of booting up the Apple iPod software, it would go right into its own software of the day had that was FLAC file compatible, which was a huge thing.
Oh, I gotta say that's way before my time.
Yes, early days. You were born though, I'm sure, Dan.
Yeah, I was born in 2000. I was probably like 4.
Okay.
Yeah, my first iPod was
playing around with crayons, you know.
It was the third generation iPod Nano. That was my first iPod.
I had the Nano too.
You youngsters.
Yeah.
So my first playback source was when I was about 4. It was a Fisher Price turntable. They made Fisher Price, the toy company, made.
Oh, the one with the
record.
I've seen those. Yeah, I've seen those.
Had a built-in speaker. My sister and I would play it. We had like the early Michael Jackson Thriller LP and some stuff we would hobble together, Bon Jovi. I mean, this was all like early 80s, but the Fisher Price is where it started. And I also had a cassette player recorder from Panasonic. So I had some early experience as a young age playing with this stuff and really getting into it. But as far as, the business side and deciding to do that in 2005, it started with the forums, started with the mods like you were mentioning, Howard, and then I started developing my own products, amplifiers, and everything back then was based on battery power, and then battery and tube input stages. And then later, when in 2015, when I changed the brand name from Red Wine Audio to Vinnie Rossi, it was a system that would use ultra capacitors. So different evolution of power supplies and also topologies for amplifiers, the DACs, phono stage, preamp. And it goes by quickly. And I've done shows every year since I started. The cool trivia question would be, what was my first audio show?
Ooh.
What was your first audio show?
Yes.
You guys have to take a guess.
2015.
Wait, what year?
2005. The first.
Oh, 2005 was the first
I
one.
would guess. I would guess the New York show.
Close. It was that same year I did the New York show, but before that show,
CES?
No.
Was it?
I don't know.
All right.
I wasn't even. I
it
couldn't
was
even walk.
The Montreal audio show.
Oh.
Had a different. This was before. Like, I know they changed owners and things. This was back when it was part of the magazine, the HiFi magazine, in I think it was in Montreal, but maybe beyond. It was called Son and Image, SON. It was French.
Okay.
It's that was when I finally got started in seeing an audio show for the first time and exhibiting. And then the New York show, which was way different back then. It was a big, busy show. And then RMAF came out a few years later. That was the first time. And then I also went to a lot of the local HiFI meets, and this is earlier days of HiFi and the Can Jams. So
yeah, because I remember, my first foray in the audiophile world was headphones, and I remember probably 10 years ago, honestly, I do remember people talking about Red Wine Audio as an interesting brand and something to watch for sure in all the HiFi forums.
Right. So the Red Wine is based on my name, like a play on the name, because if you spell Vini and an ROSSI, so Vinnie Rossi is red wines in Italian. So it just kind of it was like a
cool.
a fun way to do it. But a lot of times I'd get approached, "Are you that guy that did the Red Rose?" And I'm like, Red Rose was more.
Oh yeah.
It became confusing.
So you got kind of some negative press because of that.
It wasn't negative.
No.
It was just confusion, nothing negative. But I reached a point in working directly with all my customers that was 10 years, so about 2015, 10 years into it. I just decided with the new product line that I came out with, which was called Leo, that was going to be when I changed the whole name of the company as far as using my own name. And I think people recognize my name more than Red Wine Audio, and it was less confusing. So that's why I did that.
For sure.
Yeah.
So
All right.
What's the name of your company? Vinnie Rossi Audio or just Vinnie Rossi?
Just Vinnie Rossi.
Okay.
Vinnie Rossi. So what's your company mission?
The mission.
Yes.
So the mission has always been, even from early days when I was making my own components, but it was trying to get the what I thought was the best sounding, best performing products in their price, within their respective price points. And over the years, they've certainly have gone up in price, because my very first product started out as $499 and then went up from there. But it was always about how could I, and it still is, get the highest level performance for the price class that it's in. And also now so much is also about the way it's built, the build quality, the circuit layout, the uniqueness of the circuitry inside. We could talk more about that when we talk about my latest product, which is Brahma, but there's quite a few things that are not as conventional. And it's also about, just delivering the best customer experience as well, and support. So we back everything with a 10-year warranty. Now we have a dealer distributor network, but we're still highly involved in making sure that we're producing products that, clearly surpass. I'd like to believe that they're surpassing what many others are doing in their respective price points. And I know some of that's as well.
Vinnie, just for people who don't know, so where are you guys located?
I'm currently, and for the last few years, I've been in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is pronounced here Worcester.
Worcester.
Even though it's spelled like Worcester, like in England, it's Worcester, and it's right in the center. It's the second largest city in Massachusetts, outside of Boston. It's about an hour west, right in the center of the state. Massachusetts isn't a huge state to begin with, but yeah. So I'm based there, right? And I work right in downtown. The building is a fairly historic building that's over 100 years old, or about that, called the Printers Building. It used to house, it's about seven stories tall, but it used to house a lot of printing presses, and that all came out years ago when they converted the building over. But it's right in pretty much the center of Worcester, right off of Main Street in downtown.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How's Munich?
Munich. Okay, so that's a whole other thing. So after Exponent, the thing about Munich is it's close after Exponent. So we had to rush to get the product that we were showing at Exponent, and I wasn't even sure if it was going to be ready, which was the latest iteration of Brahma that we came out with. First time showing at Exponent, had to ship it to Munich quickly to be there at that show. So Munich is a gigantic show. If anybody hasn't been there, and you really want to see how much this hobby is thriving, and it's not all gloom and doom, you will see Munich. It's a thriving, gigantic show. It's multiple times the size of Exponent. And I know that can be hard to believe if you go to Exponent, especially this year. It's been their biggest year.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to cover it all in just a couple of days. Well, Munich is much more to cover. But it's different in that, well, first off, there's 4 main downstairs halls, they call them, which is more like a convention center where you walk and it's there's static displays. There's also these what they call sound cabins, which where they erect some walls and make smaller rooms to audition gear. But then there's all above that, the floors above, which are the atrium level floors, and that's all the listening rooms up there. And then there's all sorts of other things that are much different than any of the U.S. shows. Trying to think where to begin with that as far as how it's different. One is the first 2 days, it's a business to business show, which to my knowledge, in any of the U.S. shows, it's not only a business to business dedicated days. It's like press, everybody comes in. And
they used to do that. A couple of shows used to do that in the United States, not anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The only show that's still like a show kind of that does that is like CES.
Yeah.
That's like just a really business to business, and that's not exclusively audio by any stretch of the imagination.
Right. There's CDA as well, but that's only business to business. There's no like outside public. But.
And that's more based on pro audio. So it's a little
like TVs and more kind of home entertainment versus like pure audiophile stuff.
In Munich, it's all high end home audio, portable audio. And the first 2 days you would think, well, it's business to business, so it can't be that busy, but it's busy because you have the globe going there. It's not just a German show. It's in Germany, but pretty much every distributor, dealers, manufacturers from all different countries around the world are there. And it's even those 2 days are extremely busy, but then on Saturday when it's open to everybody, it's even busier. I think this year they definitely got over 20,000 in attendance. It might have been.
Yeah, I saw that. I think it was like 22 or 23,000, something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a huge show. Who did you exhibit with in Munich?
So Munich, I had a static display, and the reason why I was a static display because I was being asked that because I know people want to hear the product, and I wasn't 100% sure at the time when we were planning for Munich if it would be ready in time. And you need to plan for Munich months in advance. You can't just decide or try to sign up. You won't have a spot. So months in advance, you need to plan. And I wasn't sure if Brahma, the second generation Brahma that we released in Expona, would be there. So it was a static display. And with me in the static display area in Hall 4 was QLN Audio from Sweden and Marison Audio of Switzerland. Marison makes, right now they're mainly focused on high-end DACs, and QLN is loudspeakers. So I was there, and we shared a static display area. You need to plan well in advance if you want to try to get into the spaces upstairs where there's listening rooms, but now even in the halls, there's opportunities to get listening spaces.
What do you think was like people's opinion? Did they like the product? How was the experience there?
So it's different in that because you couldn't hear it. I mean, they really loved hearing about it, me talking about it, explaining it. It's also, I found that there's a lot of people actually go up to it and touch it. It's like, it's right there. It's not like they're interfering with a demo when it's a static display because you're there just to talk versus Expona or Capital Audio Fest. It's like, you could only do so much talking while people are trying to listen. You need to usually take it out into the hallway. But with this, it's like everybody's coming to talk to you. And it's, at times it's a little overwhelming. There's so many people at one time and you're showing it off, but it was dynamite. I mean, the feedback was incredible. Everybody was like, where can we hear it? And it's like, I'm sorry, but it's going to be next year for sure. But this was the year I did not have a listening room for it like I do at all the US shows.
Vinny, let's take a step back if we could. So we've been talking about Brahma, but so that's obviously, your new line and your updated line. But where does that fit into the company? How has the product line evolved over time? And, what are the differences in the new Brahma line? And what else do you make other than that?
Okay. So I'll start with a little bit of history. So I mentioned Red Wine Audio. We had a line of different components that evolved over the years, but it consisted of an integrated amplifier, DAC, phono stage, preamp, and some units that later pretty much evolved into what was called Leo, which was my modular platform I came out with from about 2015 to 2020. So it was a unit where there were certain locations within a unit to add modules. Modules meaning could be DAC, phono stage, the preamplifier stage, the speaker output, headphone output. And it was something relatively new. And I wasn't the first to do a modular platform like that, I don't think. But in terms of one that ran from isolated ultracapacitor banks and something that was so easy to just open up and plug things in. It was really good at having that flexibility for the customer to add as they went. So as time progressed and someone wanted to add a DAC or a phono, they didn't need to buy a separate box. It was something that got added in. One thing that was limiting to it is that the power output that you could fit in such an enclosure that was a standard 19-inch box, 19-inch wide, wasn't too big, was that you could only fit a little area within there for an amplifier versus all the other modules. So it was the amplifier I ran with that system was about 25 watts into 8 ohms. So it wasn't like a massive powerhouse to drive, much more difficult speaker loads. At the time when I was showing that, it was with hardbeth speakers, which aren't very high efficiency speakers by any means, but they're relatively easy to drive, and it worked well, especially in the smaller rooms where we were showing it in the audio shows. It was plenty. But it was unique in that it was modular, and two, it was running from isolated ultracapacitors, which are kind of like batteries in that they store energy, but in a different way. They're electrostatic versus electrochemical like a battery. They charge very quickly, but you need to swap banks while one's charging and one's running because the amount of stored energy versus a battery is lower. Instantaneous energy is very high with those, but also ultra caps, each capacitor is 2.7 volts max. So you need to add a string in series. And as you want to make a larger voltage rails for higher power amps, you need a whole bunch of them. And it would become unwieldy to make a simple all-in-one solution like that. So it was really a cool solution within the context of that platform. But we afterwards went to what I called L2. It was like L2L was with Leo, but it was the second. It wasn't a Leo. It also allowed for a phono stage and DAC, but the actual unit itself was a higher power amplifier, about a little over 100 watts a channel, running from a toroidal power supply. So it was a little different in that regard. But at that point, after L2 came out, I started whole questioning, where am I going to go with this? Am I going to stay direct? Because prices were going up. And if you run a company and you sell direct, even with a 30-day money-back return policy, as I did, you get to a price point as you're trying to grow and evolve your products that it's hard to sell direct, even if you offer a return policy. It's like it gets to a certain point where people want to visit it and see it at their local dealers or in their local the country. They're not just going to take a risk in buying. So I knew I had to go and step away from this direct sales model and go with a more conventional dealer distributor model. And that's what I did in 2019. And then after L2 started Brahma. Brahma is our latest product line. I know we're now at generation 2 of it. And one of the questions, I think, Howard, what's the difference? First, let me just mention when Brahma came out, it came out when COVID hit its peak. And there wasn't so much that COVID was a slowdown for us in terms of people weren't buying audio and there wasn't demand and interest. It was more like everybody in terms of buying parts. We had this phenomenon that was very much where people, at least in the United States, remember the whole the shortage of toilet paper and people were just buying up everything. Okay, imagine that. But imagine that for integrated circuits, like the microcontrollers that were in Brahma's remote, and the communication modules between the Brahma and the remote, where as we came out with it and we think everything is good to go and we're ready to go, now you're buying parts and you're realizing every other day you look and see what the inventory is on certain suppliers, distributors of parts. They were just going away. Big companies were hoarding them out of fear that, hey, these companies in Asia that were making certain chips in Taiwan and even in the United States, they had a problem in Texas at some of their plants. It was just things were stopping. Production was stopping. Companies were shutting down with COVID, and the ripple effects were going to be found, and certainly have been, because things, you couldn't buy certain parts. So our launch with Brahma, as successful it was in terms of the product and the interest and enthusiasm, some people were asking me, well, how come you don't have any reviews? I said, I couldn't get a review out because it would be a bad idea to have a product reviewed, generate more buzz for a product that I'm waiting on parts. I'm like the auto companies. I have units built, except for 1 or 2 chips that you need to complete the product, and now I can't ship them. So we got really slowed down because of that, and it was really painful. And then I found out the particular microcontroller in Brahma used for the control board on the front panel and the remote. You look up that chip and you find out when is it going to be available again. And it's like 2 years out, they're estimating, before they're going to be in stock again. And everything that we designed around that, the software, I mean, it's specific for that integrated circuit. It's a microcontroller. I mean, you can't just swap it out with something else. 1, 2, 3. Mm-hmm. You guys seen Brahma? It's as far as how it operates, the software, it's fairly unique, and there was a lot of development time. So we found out that there was such a shortage, and it's so hard to get certain parts. Even things like the backlight, the LED driver chip backlight, they were gone. And I'd go on looking for parts, and you'd find certain companies overseas are just gobbled them up, which they have a right to do so. And they would charge 10x, 20x, 50x what the normal price was. And it's like, all right, I got to bite the bullet now and buy 100 of this chip at over 10 times the cost. And then they write back to you saying, oh, no, if you're going to buy this, you're not going to buy 100. You're going to buy minimum order quantity, 2,000, 3,000. Otherwise, you don't get it. So now you're at a much higher markup for the part, and you have to have a minimum order quantity that's like painful. Because, what am I going to do with so many thousands of these? I wasn't planning on thinking I was going to have all these units to sell that quickly. And so it was really hard. And you learn lessons from when you run business, from things that you don't expect. And you run into these difficult times, and, you just learn what you need to do to plot a course forward. So that was, okay, I need to respin these boards using a different microcontroller, one that I could have in stock, and obtain enough stock early on before it even starts, so I know I'm not going to be in this predicament. And that changed everything, because I was also listening to feedback from our distributors and dealers and things, while I'm at it. Like, for instance, Brahma is amazing. From end to end, it's 20.5 inches. Who was the idiot that decided to make it 20.5 inches when certain racks were just a little, shorter than that? The width wasn't quite that much. They would have trouble fitting. It's like, oh, that's a really good point. So it's like, now I should probably consider, making it 19 inches.
Can you guys see that?
Like, it's not shared yet, Howard, if you're doing a screen share.
There we go.
Okay, those are the latest ones.
Yep.
Okay, but and then when I was at it, and I was thinking, like, if I'm going to change the size of the chassis, this gives me an opportunity to change how I do the chassis altogether. I was doing with the first Brahma separate side panels, top panel, rear panel. I mean, they were all machined from solid aluminum. They weren't folded sheet metal units, but I had this idea, and some of the shows we were exhibiting, I had MSB DAC, and I saw this solid body MSB DAC, and I'm like, I would love to make Brahma a solid piece where it's machined from a chunk of aluminum, a solid block, and inside, when they CNC it, there are different compartments for the different parts. Like, the power supply goes in its own 4 walls that are machined into this block, so that it could be optimally shielded in this chamber within the unit. And I could also get awesome heat transfer from a solid piece. It's much different when you have a side panel that your amplifier is mounted to, that it gets mounted to the chassis, but it's separate. Because once you have that cut between, like, your front or your bottom versus having it one piece, the thermal energy transfers differently. It's way better having it as one piece, because the heat just kind of uniformly wraps over this whole entire body. So I'm like, this is amazing. And then there are other attributes that were advantageous to go with a solid body. Resonance control, having separate pieces when you tap on it versus a solid block. It's night and day. The grounding itself of this chassis being all one continuous piece is better. And aesthetically, it became more seamless looking, where you don't have seams, you don't have screws showing. Everything is built pretty much upside down. All the heat generating devices are mounted to the top of the inside, which is the best place to put them. The heat's obviously rising. So pretty much besides the boards having to change the layout and go with this other parts, I figured if we took such a hard time with the launch of the first Brahma, like I wanted to get everything optimized and learn from everything just to make it something now where I released Brahma 2. It's something that needs to change for many years to come. I want to leave it. It's where I want it to be. And we made a lot of different improvements with it. And I feel like now it's where we need it to be, and we could produce them and have the parts to do so long term.
So those reasons are why the second gen came out so fast after the first generation.
Yeah, it was under 3 years since the first one was launched. So it was like 2.5 years, maybe a little more, before we announced it, and then that the second gen was coming, which was before Xpona, and we were able to show it. But yeah, normally it would have been a lot longer, especially when you factor in the development costs and time and years to design it. It was incredible. So to do this, it was more cost and time, but I knew this early on when Brahma launched, and we found the predicament about being short on supplies, and we couldn't make that many. And we had a few Asian distributors we were supplying to. They got reviews in their local magazines in Hong Kong and in Korea, and it was really growing, not just in the United States. And I knew I needed to halt it because we weren't going to be able to keep making them. So while we had our dealers had store demo units, but there weren't that many that we could just make to grow the model and get the reviews locally and really push it. We did a few shows, of course, the Xpona, Capital Audio Fest, but I knew I needed to throttle it a little bit, and it was painful to do it. But while I was throttling it, we were planning for what were we going to do about this long term and have a better strategy to finally get it to where it needs to be and get it perfected, and also have the supply chain pretty much where we needed to be, where we could do it. So yeah, that was the reason why it happened quickly. And I'm sure you've heard other stories from other companies and their war stories about COVID and what it did, and some fared better with it if they had more parts on hand, and some struggled with it as well. And it was strange because before, the manufacturers, a lot of them felt it. I think initially it was the dealers who felt it, because as soon as COVID became known, and it was like it kind of got slower, and then all of a sudden got busy again. And it was based on how things had to be closed and the uncertainty. But then people were going to visit their dealers, with all the COVID protocols, and it was a tough time. It's nice that we're finally over that, and I just hope for long term we don't have to experience something like that nature again for a long, long time, and we're more prepared for it. Yeah.
By the way, Vinny, so I love the Brahma series, but do you ever think about making something more affordable? Because
that comes up
for the entry level.
What I say to that is, I've done the affordable thing for many years, and things have gotten more expensive, but the designs have progressed tremendously. And I think we're at the point where there's so many brands making things in the under $1,000, under $5,000, under $10,000 range. And I've done that too. And I felt over time, it's like I had my sights set on, well, how about the higher end, and how are they doing? What are they doing? And can I do better in that range and provide what I believe is superior solutions in similar price points? So I'm not in a rush to go and come back to lower cost. I think there's so much out there that, and I know it's not for everybody, but it's not like me saying to everybody, well, too bad for you. I mean, there's so many good things out there, and I think, but where I am now, and how I have evolved, I think where maybe a lower cost solution, like kind of where I was around with L2 range, but it wouldn't be lower than that. And L2 was just shy of MSRP of around 20,000. So in that range, possibly.
What is the Brahma? The new Brahma.
I won't have a Vinnie Rossi in my house.
What is the new Brahma stuff? What is the prices on those?
Okay. So the Brahma line is right now, it's just 3 components. It's the integrated amplifier, the Brahma preamplifier, and then we went from a stereo amp to monoblocks instead. So it's monoblocks. So the preamp is at 39,000, the integrated is 48, and the monoblocks are at 60 a pair. So
60 G's.
So just a question. So looking at the gear, how did it come about that the feet are actually like almost like on speakers, how the feet come out outside the box, right?
Yeah, that. So when I started working on Brahma, the first thing I wanted to do is define. I had an idea already, a really good idea how I wanted the circuits to be and the type of audio topology. I wanted 300B triodes. We could talk about that, but they're in the line stage. I was going to be a MOSFET output stage. I wanted to improve upon L2, which also had the tube input stage and the MOSFET output. And I wanted to change other attributes of it. But as far as the aesthetic, I wanted to find my new design language that I want to go decades forward with, and not just something that was, I had to spend more time and spend more into the design language as well. I hired a fantastic industrial designer. He's in Montreal. His name is Olivier Raymond. He's fantastic. I could tell you stories how I met with him, but basically, when we started having our discussions about the design language and what Brahma is going to be, I wanted something that I felt like it would not be retro, it would not be futuristic. It needed to be more timeless. And I valued, and he especially valued, keeping it minimal and not trying to be so ostentatious and showy about how it looks and trying to get so much attention, but it needed to be classy and elegant and just speaking true luxury without needing to shout at you.
Mm-hmm.
So I really wanted to go with an analog gauge. We were also thinking about, the remote. And in the past, all my remotes, they were infrared based buttons for certain functions, but this time I was thinking like, look, I really want this remote to be something that when people use the product, that the information they want to adjust and see should be visible. So I needed a display, and I was trying to think, well, do I want to use an app, like an iPad or Android type app, which I know a lot of people do. And I kind of shied away from that because I didn't want to develop something that was tied to another company. So if Android or Apple comes out with a new iOS or, whatever updated operating system they come out with, I didn't want it to just break. And that was going to be my issue to have to redesign the software to make it compatible with the latest. I'm like, I needed my own remote, and I wanted it to be really simple to use and have a simple menu structure. Yes, it was kind of inspired about the original iPod, having just a simple menu, but instead of having a click wheel, it just buttons up, down, left, right, and enter.
Can you throw that up there, Giles?
Oh, absolutely.
You guys got to see the remote. That thing.
Yeah, that thing's so
Look
good.
at that.
So Olivier designed out this remote, and he was showing me some really cool ideas about how we could do this. And that's using an LCD that's full color LCD. We do not use the color. I just wanted a black background, white text. I wanted it to just look like it belongs with the product. And that's, when you're seeing the volume right there, but then you press the back button, which is the upper right as you're looking at, it shows a little back arrow. That takes you to the menu. You could adjust things like the balance, the gain. You could adjust the backlight of the gauge, the brightness. So it's really easy to use. And then now it's even simplified versus the original Brahma, the menu. Like even changing inputs, it's just the left and right button to change the volume. It's up, down. We improve the battery life. That's using a USB-C charger at the bottom. It's a rechargeable battery. And we found a new way with the latest that after a minute of inactivity, the display will turn off, but the remote is still fully usable, up, down for volume, which is pretty much what you mainly use with the remote, and mute. And then if you need to go back in, you just hit the back button, then it goes back where you can see the display. So it's really simple, but sometimes when you design for simplicity, it's really complex to lay it all out and make it intuitive and to have something that's just always connected. So if you go up to the Brahma integrated or preamplifier and change the volume, like the remote volume is changing synchronized with the actual volume knob. I wanted that to be where it's like, this isn't a, what do you call it? Like where you have a system where the remote is the leader, and now what the unit does is based on the remote. Now you could actually have the unit change, and the remote will reflect that. So
It all changes in tandem, but
it changed exactly. It was like, and they don't talk via infrared. They're talking via peer-to-peer Wi-Fi. It's a Wi-Fi / Bluetooth module. You can run it in either band, but we run it in peer-to-peer Wi-Fi. Peer-to-peer meaning there's no router needed. You don't need to, worry about that. It just turns on and they're ready. They synchronize, and you don't need to worry about line of sight. You could walk 30 feet away in another room and it's still controlling it. So that way, it's more responsive in that regard. It's synchronized, and you could see exactly the things you need to see from your listening chair, which I thought was most important, because having an analog display on the unit is really cool. But if you have a unit that's X amount of feet away and you just can't see it properly, it's nice that exactly the parameters on the remote. And it allowed me to remove a lot of visual noise from the Brahma itself. And you don't see a bunch of buttons and LEDs and all these things. We did not want that. You don't see an analog display with a digital display, because certain things are hard to read on the analog. It's like the remote has it all.
That's what I love about it. So clean. Perfect.
And then we were also thinking, like, do we want it so it's like around, you rotate the knob. There's different ways to do a remote. And we just wanted it where one hand, you could just hold it and you only use one hand and do everything you need to do and set it down. And it's simple. And it, even like the radius, the curvatures you see on the way it is, it's all mapped to Brahma and how we do that. The same language, the same simplicity, timeless. It's in very clean layout and user interface. That was really important to Olivier and myself, and teaming up with him, we were able to define the look and feel. In terms of the interior, the build quality, that's where I got involved, and that's like, the layout, and that's a whole other thing that separates us, I think, from a lot of other companies. Is we, especially with Brahma, more than any product I've done, we really mapped out an internal layout to give the shortest signal paths and power paths involved. Something popped up.
Yeah, it's definitely just like an unbelievable look. Like I know we saw it a little earlier. We saw the remote, but like just seeing it's something else. And like you said, that simplicity it seems easy, but at the same time, designing it to where it looks that good is very hard.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
And designing that remote, not just the look of it, but the software,
the functionality,
PCB, and getting it all just to behave from your own company, where you're not just taking an app and adding in buttons, and it's like it just had to be from the ground up. It was.
Well, Vinnie, I'll make you a promise. I don't know if you know this, but a couple of years ago, I ran over a Bryston remote, because those remotes are pretty solid. I mean, they're a solid block of aluminum. So we ran one over, which with the express permission of the distributor, with my friend's SUV, just to see if it would keep on ticking, and had a few scratches on it. And then my friend's 2-year-old went and retrieved it and brought it back, and it worked. But we won't do that with yours if we get one.
That might have been the same remote. I'm not sure. I shouldn't say that, but my last two products, Leo and L2, used a remote that was designed and I purchased from, I have to give a shout out, John Chapman, ACL Innovations in Surrey, Canada, Vancouver area. He was the one that came out with that body and those buttons. And pretty much I bought from him. A lot of other manufacturers do and still do. And he designed just a bulletproof remote. And that really got me into remotes and thinking this is an important piece. And it should not be, especially at these price points, it should not be cheap. Because there are a lot of products that are very expensive, and I think they're just fairly cheap remotes. And I think at this point, the expectation is like this remote needs to be solid. It needs to, just be well designed and attractive.
There's no excuses, right?
There's no effort at this point.
If you're paying like 50 grand for
even
something,
at the lower price point. So for not to get just a standard knockoff, remote. So at the higher price points, there's certainly no.
When you're doing smaller scale, lower cost, even if you're using like, at least back in the day, it was the Apple remote. A lot of companies would just use an Apple remote, but you could use it to work with a board of your own liking. But it was a nice, metal remote. But then,
still a good remote.
Yeah, I mean, it achieved the purpose, and it was nice. But it's an Apple remote. When you start, getting up there in price, the expectations, I think, is like it should be a remote that, is something that's designed properly from the ground up, and that's what we had to do with Brahma remote. And You never realize how much work and time would go into a remote, but it just things like the charging, the battery management, the connectivity, everything about it. And that whole remote is also a solid block of aluminum machined with a back plate. So you have an opening in the back to put the board in, the LCD, everything, and then pretty much close it so it's solid. So you can.
might have an
I
obsession
wouldn't
with
drive over it though, because you will hurt the buttons, scratch it up. But yeah,
we won't do that. But I'm curious. So what type of speakers do you like to pair? You mentioned QLN, right?
QLN in Sweden, we've done shows. I think we were talking before this started about Expona 2022 was Rockport.
Yeah.
We had H302s. Rockport.
That sounded good.
The last two shows I've done, including this most recent Expona 2024, YG Acoustics, fantastic as well. And of course, our dealers and distributors, they're using things from Wilson's, Magicos, just real top tier. And we had to design Brahma and make sure that it could cope with various types of speakers, not just in terms of power and being able to handle the low impedance dips of some of them, the high current demands of those speakers, but also just even things like horns that are super sensitive. I wanted to handle the gain staging where you can lower the gain to get a more optimal range from the volume. You put in some really high efficiency speakers like horns with a power amp that's really strong that has a decent amount of gain. You could find that you're starting in volume 1 and 2 and it's kind of loud. You don't get much range. So, and I always felt that when you design an amplifier and allow for the gain to be adjusted accordingly to your system, so to your source components, to your loudspeakers in your room, and just how you like to listen, using a volume control, no matter what it is. Ours is, it's resistive based ladder control, but having the higher settings means there's less resistance in the path. So it's always nice to be able to get that volume, high enough in range where you're getting optimal quality. You don't want it all just attenuated down because you're making all this gain. You're doing all this attenuation and boosting it with gain. It's kind of, you're shooting yourself in the foot in terms of noise floor and performance. So speaker wise, it needs to sound really good with many things, and pretty much anything you throw at it, it needs to do quite well with. We all are going to have our preferences and favorites, but they're just that, they're personal favorites. It's still in terms of being able to command and drive properly nearly everything out there. I've heard people asking about like apogees and like ones that are silly, like crazy low impedance. But you might need even more current for something that's so out there. But for 90 something percent of speakers, 98%, no problem.
You might have an obsession with aluminum, man.
Well, with the YGs, with the silver, it went really well together.
Yeah, it went really well together.
That room looked perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so will the Brahma line expand into more segments like a phono or a DAC? Do you ever think about that? Or
yeah, absolutely. We were thinking about it. It wasn't something that I wanted to do right away with Brahma. We wanted to start with. Pretty much you have a pre and a mono blocks at that price point that you add up, and half of that price approximately is the integrated, which gives you a lot for what it is. But we didn't get around to completing the whole line, and that's something that we'll add later. Brahma, the second gen Brahma is one that we're keeping a very long term. So adding in other components with that form factor, with that design language, that's even like the analog gauge. If there's going to be a DAC, you're going to see representation on the front panel in the analog domain. You're going to see that needle showing, for instance, what sampling frequency you're running at. The remote, of course, would show you, things, with a digital display. But yeah, so later, it's very likely you'll see other things in the Brahma line, and that'll be a line that will stay long term. And then will there be other lines above and below? We'll see. But these are things that are going to come as they come, and we're not rushing for either because, we're just getting going finally in production with this one.
Yeah, well, it's definitely, something that you can buy and definitely be satisfied for a long time. And it definitely seems like something that's built to last. And like you said earlier, for those who missed it, the 10-year warranty, one of the best in the industry for sure.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. If you are going to hold on to these products for 10 years, which I suspect you'll be able to do, then Vinny's gonna have to come up with some new products, right?
Yeah. And then I still have customers that contact me from the red wine days, and they have, and even though these are out of warranty, if they need a battery or, batteries don't last forever. Obviously, even the later ones we used were lithium iron phosphate based, which were much longer lasting than the lead acid. But yeah, I mean, I'm still there. People are contacting me for support, and it's really cool when someone sends back some of the early stuff, just because it's like you brings back memories when I even built it. But the fact that someone hasn't even needed to change it and they're still getting use out of it, or they're finding it on the used market and they're just learning about the stuff I did back then. And of course, I totally understand, like, there's a price point for everybody at different times in the industry, where they are in this hobby or just in general. So it's not everybody's going to buy Brahma, and I'm certainly not expecting that. There's just so much out there now too, but it's just nice to see that these products still mean a lot to people who have them.
So you're saying it's a 10-year warranty on these products?
Exactly.
That's awesome, because
but after warranty, I'll still service them. I'm still servicing things,
right.
And the warranty applies to the original customer. If you buy it used, it's out of warranty, and it's always been like that. But I'm still servicing it. It's not like, go away, I don't touch that because you didn't buy it from me, or it's past 10 years. I'm not going to look at it. Like I'd love to work on these. I love to service them, but
that's pretty standard. I mean, that's fair. I just think there are too many people selling $45,000 amplifiers with the 2 or 3 year warranty.
Again, I don't think there's expectations. I mean, this is not inexpensive. Like, it needs to be, the company standing behind the product should just be a given when you're getting to that level of cost too, right? So people who know me and work with me, and they know if there's anything going on with their product, like, I'm going to get on it right away. I think that takes priority. It's like, there's something going on here. Someone, clearly they supported us, and a lot of them have supported me throughout my years and have moved up the lines over the years. So it's like, they really do get top priority. And we're not a huge company where it's like, you're a number. And I know we're not direct anymore, but we still communicate with our dealers and our customers and make sure that the customers know if they need to contact me directly about anything, that they could do so. And that's the way it'll always be. I'm still, like, very highly involved with these units at the shows. It's not like one of these things where I'm building this company only to just get away from it and move on to another company. Like, this is, what I do. And I can't see myself really that's ever going to change.
That's awesome. There's the guy from the Canadian that had the Apogee.
Okay.
So that you talked about.
Okay.
Yeah. Chuck's here. He's one of my guys. He was saying that your room at Exponent was one of his favorites.
Thank you. Yeah, we love the shows are awesome, and I love the feedback from it too. Just hearing that, and I love when people come in and they remember shows I did like years back. It's like, I remember when you had this, the Leo with the hard bets, and you played this song. Do you still have that song on your playlist? And I'm like, how do you remember that? And it's because they, but a lot of things that I remember from the past, if there was music involved that I was listening to when something was going on, like, I tend to remember better with the music. Like, it just invokes memories. And I just love people who remember at these shows what was being played and what song it was. I'm like, wow, that's incredible. So yeah. Trade shows in general, sometimes it's tough because, we do stream. Sometimes it's complicated with the hotel's network. I mean, you have a hotel that normally provides internet as a service for your sleeping room, but now when every room in multiple floors are all taking bandwidth and now streaming high res, Cobuzz, things like that, there are dropouts and some trouble, but most of the time, we could make it work and queue up, which is beautiful now because you could just take your tablet and queue up anything that anybody's looking for. And you learn about all kinds of different things that way. And that's one of the best things I find about the show is it's just people exchanging about different music that's out there that they want to hear. And it usually leads to people wanting to have a dialogue about music too and different things they're hearing. And it's a lot of fun.
Next time I gotta play some 21 Savage so we can get the audio.
Oh my God.
You threw in some
hate it so much.
You guys bring in some good requests to, and I know a part of it too is like you're filming the speaker and you want to see that thing move and, and you want to see that that woofer going.
That's what I love.
Yeah. Dan showed me some
distortion.
He showed me some 21 Savage song where the song ends and 21 Savage tells a story about how he robbed this guy, but he was happy that he robbed him because he's 21 Savage. Because he's famous.
Just love that.
So stupid.
It's funny.
So Vinny,
just...
so these products they link together through a proprietary connection. Is that what's going on?
Yeah. So Brahma's got this Brahma link now, so you could connect the preamp to the monoblocks or multiple monoblocks. This is when people ask about biamping and multiple amps per speaker, but you could pretty much link them together, and through that jack, you're able to, via the preamp, everything turns on in a synchronized fashion. So you turn on the preamp turns on, and then the monos turn on. It reverses the order when you turn off, but it just makes it so that with one button, either the knob on the pre or the remote, you can link them together. But also in terms of diagnostics, like things like overcurrent. Let's say the right monoblock, somebody accidentally shorted the speaker post when they were changing them, or the spades got loose and they touched, and now you overcurrented the amp. Via the remote, you're going to see right monoblock overcurrent, because when it shuts off, it's nice to know why it did that. So we had to work out the diagnostics. Awesome. So via that link, it's going to send it to the preamp, which is the one that connects to your remote. Now everything is just via the one remote on the pre, or if you have the integrated. But yeah, so there's basically it's like a trigger turning on and off, but there's also a data link as well in that connector, which is a TRS standard, which you'd see as a quarter-inch headphone jack. Yeah, ground. You got your trigger, and then you have your proprietary. It's just a data line, really.
How many power amps can you plug up together? Only 2, or you can
go? No, you can plug. You can daisy chain many. Like, there's no limit, really.
Unlimited power, more power, baby.
You needed X amount of amps per channel, whatever, depending on what you're powering, you could do that. And then like the preamp and integrated also has the preamp outputs, so that you could do multiple amplifiers. Like the preamp has 3. They're isolated. They're individual preamp outputs, 3 each pair. So you could run like things like powered subwoofers, or even some speakers have partially powered bass drivers, or you could do the monoblocks or powered amps and do multiple. You don't have to worry about loading it down. You could drive. I've driven with our preamp outputs headphones with a connector I made that took the XLRs, converting to a 4-pin XLR, and the loading even of a 600 ohm headphone or 300 ohm Sennheiser was no problem for it. So yeah, if you need to daisy chain lots of units together, you could do so.
So there's awesome. A question here that asks, are the tube on your preamp and integrated
are they user replaceable?
Yeah, absolutely. So now with the new Brahma Generation 2, we include a matched pair Western Electric 300Bs. So I get them right from Rossville, Georgia's plant. They match them, which I like about Western Electric especially is that they give you the data of the tube. They test them and show you, so you know how well they perform. The serial number of the tube is in the tube in the test report. And they provide a 5-year warranty on the tubes. But keep in mind, we're running 300B triodes, which is uncommon to run in a preamplifier. Why do we do it? Basically, I found using that directly heated triode in the line stage sounds like no other. And you're taking a tube that typically you'd find powering SET amplifier, so low wattage amplifier. But when you run it in a preamp, the longevity of that tube is substantially increased. It doesn't run nearly as hot. You're running at lower plate voltage, plate currents. So if you need to change it, absolutely you can do so.
And how long would you recommend every change? Is it forever on the amplifier, or is there like a shelf?
So it's the preamplifier and the integrated have the tubes. They're in the line stage. The monoblocks don't have any tubes. But as far as how long will it go, there's no reason why it won't go over 10 years.
Okay.
Wow. I mean, because
so it's not like a tube amp that you have to switch every year.
No. And the way even in which we started up, when the power is applied, like the ramp up of the cathodes, heating them, it's a soft start, and we're not running them nearly as high or running at nearly as high current because we're not powering speakers with them. We are getting a lot of characteristics of that triode. We're running them, no feedback, Class A. Obviously, it's just a line stage triode, but to actually generate the current to drive speakers. Now we're dealing with our MOSFET output stage. I think, some will call that a hybrid design. Hybrid could be a lot of different things, that you're combining two different topologies, but in our case, it's directly heated triode. And unlike earlier products where we had like L2, where you could change directly heated triodes, different families, I had a switch on the back. Brahma has only been 300B. I optimized that circuit around 300B. And this latest one around the Western Electric, you certainly could use other ones, but everything was voiced around this tube. Everything was optimized, all the parameters, how we bias it, everything in that circuit was for that tube. And I think for sure you'll get the best results with it.
How hard is it to find? Because I was looking into tube amps, and some tube amps are like, you buy it and the tubes are gone. You have to plug another tube in, and then it sounds different. Are those tubes easy to find, or?
Western Electric sells them. You can buy them right from Western Electric. So
okay.
westernelectric.com, yeah. And they're not hard to get. They're in production. They've been in for production for quite a few years now. They ramped up. There was a time when they talked about coming out with, they were remaking the 300B, ramping up production of that tube. I know it took them quite a while to do it, but they're building them to the original standards. And it was quite the feat. And if you've seen like production factory videos, how they do it, it's incredible. That's a legendary tube back from,
yeah,
I want to say that when it first came out, was it the 20s or 1930s?
The 20s, yeah. The 20s, yeah.
So we're talking like something they make a triode like no other. They really do, and they have that pretty much. They own the rights to it. I mean, it's their tube now, and they're making them new again. And some of the people I heard that they were running in that line, they had to hire back from those days, and they still like remember everything that went into those tubes. So they make a fantastic triode. There are other really good 300Bs out there as well. So it's not like you're stuck with it, but everything was really just matched for this.
All right. Yeah, so where can people buy Vinnie Rossi gear and listen to Vinnie Rossi gear if they want to?
Yeah, so the best way is just to look on our website we have a distributors page, and it shows local dealers, but also distributors. We are now, and we were at Munich, and we are branching to other countries. I mean, that's going to happen with time. And of course, new dealers, and especially audio shows. I mean, I know not everybody could get to the shows when they are. I mean, there's sometimes you need to take a flight, but man, like if you don't have someone local and you want to hear it, especially when you're talking about something at its cost, you want to be able to hear it for yourself and really experience it before you buy. Or contact one of our dealers and nearest dealer to you and see what you can arrange, because they want to make sure that you get that really good experience setting it up and hearing it what it has to offer.
Yeah,
it's cool.
All right,
Vinnie, I'm sorry, are you going to be at Capital Audio Fest?
I'm definitely going to be at Capital Audio Fest, and that's the show I could actually drive to.
Nice.
Whether or not I will this year, I don't know. I mean, I have done it, but it's a great show. That show has also grown so much over the years, and I love to be there. So absolutely, we have a local dealer in that area, Alma Audio. It was a company from San Diego, but they also started up on the East Coast, and they're in Virginia. So we go out there to support them. It's Alma room, and we're there with them. They usually set up a few rooms at the show for different lines they carry. So I'll certainly be there in November. I think it's the 9th that weekend. They announced it.
Are they bringing the Brahma Gen 2 to the show in California, or no? Do you know what they're bringing there? Or?
No, I'm not exactly sure what that room's going to be in California, but I don't believe, because Gen 2 just came out, and we're in production now. Meaning, I was actually at the shop today before this call. Like we're running even the weekend. We're getting things going. So we're still have to supply our dealer network with the new units. So timing was really tough, because if I couldn't get it done in time, because back then when you plan for a show months ahead, it's iffy. If I say, well, we hope to have it ready, you can't bank on it and do a show knowing if you're going to have it or not and start planning around it. So yeah, it wasn't the right timing.
Yeah. Well, I hope when the production is more mature and you get some units out there, I hope we can get some review units.
Absolutely, guys. We really appreciate it too. And just seeing you guys come checking it out at the show. shooting some, some videos of it. I see those being posted too. It's great, and we'll be doing a lot more of that too. We're finally hitting the ground running now, and we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. I love your product. I love you. You're the best. And
Yeah,
the
this
rooms
is
are
awesome,
always
Vinny.
speechless. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
One day I'll own it. I'll own one.
It's coming.
Just one.
It's coming.
Awesome.
Yeah. So,
Do you guys have any other questions or anything that was asked that I missed or were?
Yeah.
pretty
Are you
good?
guys have any questions?
I think we covered everything. I mean, we're
Yeah.
over our hour, so
Yeah.
it was a good discussion for sure.
I mean, I'm sure we can spend another whole session just talking about circuitry, but
Yeah.
I don't think we have time for that. So
I'd love to do it. Absolutely.
we could do that next time.
Whenever you
For
guys
sure.
say the word, it'll be fun.
That would be interesting.
Talk about all different topics. Doesn't even have to be about Brahma. If you just want to talk about things in general, power supplies, different classes of amplifiers. I think you were mentioning earlier. Someone was asking about it, but that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Very
let's
cool.
do it.
All right, guys.
All right.
All right,
think
thanks,
we
Vinny,
will-
for coming over.
Turtle.
And thanks to the millions of viewers for watching us. Awesome.
One day.
It's only 900,000 almost.
And check us out on every Sunday. Once a month, we'll have a special guest like Vinny, but every Sunday we're here talking about audio.
Yeah, just
Thanks for all your
chilling.
time too. Really appreciate it, guys, and thanks for the invite.
Thanks.
All right.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
Take care,
bye,
everybody.
everybody.
See you guys.
Thanks everyone. Take care. You're my
Take
camera
care.
went out.